morning, everybody from California. Thank you all for being here. Again, thank you, Felipe, for the amazing information. My name is Uriel Hernandez. I'm a project manager for the city of Palo Alto's Urban Forestry Division. I'm relatively new to this particular role, but I began my career in urban forestry over 8 years ago in this same community. I grew up right in this area. My parents immigrated from Mexico and from Nicaragua, and I'll be sharing some of my personal experience, my perspective, and lessons learned throughout my career. This photograph right here is from my very first neighborhood tree planting that I led back in September of 2015 when I was working at Canopy, a local nonprofit. And the trident maple that we planted there is still there. It's growing strong. As I mentioned, I currently work for the city of Palo Alto. The city is named after a tree, El Palo Alto, which is Spanish for tall stick. It's a coast redwood. It's there in the top right photo. The population of our city is 68,000 people. It's one of the most expensive cities in the United States in which to live, and our residents are among the most educated in the country. We cover approximately 24 square miles of land. It's an amazing city with a robust urban forestry program and many trees. Our urban forestry section maintains nearly 66,000 trees in our urban forests on public property, private property. The city, we manage our own electrical utilities, so we also, provide vegetation management services on private property for trees near the power line. So we do a lot. We have a number of accreditations. We're a Tree City USA, a Tree Line USA electrical utility. We have accreditation from the Society of Municipal Arborists, and we have a number of tree resources and policies available that guide sort of tree use in the city. We have our tree protection ordinance, an urban forest master plan, which was recently updated. We have a tree technical manual. There's a photo there which provides a lot of guidance and policy on how to manage trees in the city, which we're currently working on updating to include more landscape, more landscape features. So, we're a city that does a lot and very innovative, but during my time here, I've also come to learn that we could, certainly do more to engage our Latino and Hispanic community. So right next door is the city of East Palo Alto. It's a different municipality, different county. It's in San Mateo County, and it's my hometown. It's where I grew up. It is a majority Latino community. It has less canopy coverage, fewer resources than surrounding communities, including Palo Alto. Yeah, it sits on the very southern edge of San Mateo County. It's a relatively young city. It was just incorporated in 1983. Back in 1990, when I was, baby, 43% of the residents of East Palo Alto were African Americans, and this was the result of redlining practices, racial deed restrictions in Palo Alto and surrounding communities, going back generations. Currently, as of 2020, the Latino population makes up 2/3 of the city's population. The proportion of African Americans has decreased to about 12%. The city has less than half of the population of Palo Alto and 10% of the land of Palo Alto comparatively. So it's a really small city. But East Palo Alto has good equitable policies, really strong housing and tenant protections. Like I said, I grew up in East Palo Alto, very active. I currently sit on the city's planning commission. I sit on the board of two nonprofits, one being Canopy, another one being Nuestra Casa, which focuses on, assisting the Latino community within East Palo Alto and other surrounding communities through outreach and, a variety of programs. East Palo Alto does not have a city arborist or really any dedicated urban forestry staff. The city actually just developed its first urban forest master plan in April of last year. There's a photo of the cover right there. It was funded by a CAL FIRE grant through the state, and I helped the city sort of design that. I helped them apply for the grant back when I was at Canopy, And I served as a consultant when we were putting together the plan when I was working at Fort Science Bartlett Consulting. We led a really robust community engagement campaign with surveys, focus groups, listening sessions, sort of following a lot of the tips that Felipe just shared. As I mentioned, canopy. Um, growing up in East Palo Alto, I did not really grow up with a robust urban forest in my community. We didn't really have a lot of trees. Urban forestry was not really a career path that ever crossed my mind growing up until I began volunteering with my local urban forestry nonprofit Canopy back in 2014. Currently, I sit on their board of directors. Just really fell in love with the organization. Their mission is to grow the urban tree canopy in Mid-Peninsula communities for the benefit of all. Everybody deserves to have trees. Vision is a day when every resident of the Mid-Peninsula can step outside to walk, play, and thrive under the shade of healthy trees. Everyone here, we're all tree lovers. We understand their benefits. Canopy offers a ton of programs, tree planting, tree care, education, advocacy. They assist with policy. My first event with them was helping to water and mulch trees at a local elementary school. They then offered workshops that I attended on pruning trees, with other community members, professional arborists. I learned to plant trees and lead volunteers. Volunteered in their education program, teaching second and fifth graders about trees and urban forestry at schools that I attended. And that really sort of ignited a passion in me and in other people that I've seen volunteer with them over the years. In 2015, Canopy received a grant to plant an additional 500 trees in East Palo Alto, and I was brought on as staff to spearhead that program. And it was really building off of earlier efforts that they had done to plant, about 2,000 trees in East Palo Alto at that point. Over the years, they've planted over 3,000 trees in East Palo Alto. This is about 20% of all street trees in the city, in addition to a number of private trees. The photo that's included here is actually from a planting that we led on MLK Day in 2017 that I organized. And partnerships with Canopy and other community groups have been super important, been critical to urban forestry in East Palo Alto as well as in Palo Alto. Canopy was founded in Palo Alto, and I would definitely urge all cities to work with nonprofits, with community groups, because you're just able to do a lot more with them, and they understand the community and are able to react to the needs and really develop relationships and build trust with folks. Currently in Palo Alto, Canopy is focusing on planting trees in the southern part of the city through their South Palo Alto Tree Initiative. The southern part of Palo Alto doesn't have as much canopy cover as the northern part, and it also tends to be an area with more, people of color, Latinos in particular. So a little bit more context. I'm mentioning that I didn't grow up with many trees. This is a canopy coverage map that shows a comparison between the different communities and canopy coverage. So East Palo Alto only has 13% canopy coverage, while Palo Alto has nearly 40%. Surrounding communities, Menlo Park, 27%, and then Atherton, which is not highlighted there, but you can see a lot greener. Canopy covered disparity exists in our communities. You can see it from space. The wealth divide is striking. Rich areas are lush with trees while poor cities are not, and this has huge impacts on physical, mental, and ecological health of communities. There's a huge need to plant and care for trees in communities like East Palo Alto, traditionally working class communities with, larger populations of people of color, Latinos in particular in California. And to have successful urban forestry programs, we really need to mobilize these communities and get them involved. I'm gonna, go over some more ways of doing that, and I'm sure, there's a lot of overlap with Felipe's presentation. I'll try to also kind of speed through it. So, with just some tips on engagement, Felipe already went through a lot of this. One thing that I would like to add is just, the importance of access to trees and parks. Parks are critical gathering space outside. Those can be much more impactful than other forms of urban greenery. East Palo Alto doesn't have as much park space. So when I was growing up, we would always go to parks in other communities. Palo Alto Menlo Park, that's where we would go when I was growing up. But communities, need their own parks, their own activation. That's how you get people excited about spending time outside in their own community. And Latino community in particular, really gravitates to parks, playing soccer, hanging out after church, having barbecues, spending time with the family. And, they're a safe space. Oftentimes these neighborhoods, won't necessarily be safest, be plagued by crime. I know in East Palo Alto, that was certainly an issue growing up, and parks were a little bit safer and more of a neutral place to gather. We've discussed the need to have family-friendly events. They also provide that safe place to bring the whole family together. And family tends to be a very powerful value in Latino culture. So, having childcare, children's activities at events tends to make them more successful. On Palo Alto, we traditionally held a big Arbor Day festival with things like tree climbing, face painting, other activities for kids and the whole family. That was always really popular and drew people in from other communities. It wasn't just for Palo Alto residents. Connections, asking people about their emotional connections to trees and building on that. Most people, if not everybody, has trees that they remember, that they have an emotional connection to, trees that they like. Folks who are immigrants, maybe they left behind, these very deep relationships to trees in their homeland. And it's something that, could be tapped into, could be talked about, could be built as they, begin life anew in the United States. It's important to ask, what kind of trees people like, trees that they're familiar with. There's lots of like Latin American trees and fruit or medicinal properties that maybe we're less familiar with here. In the work that I've done in East Palo Alto, I find that smaller shade trees and fruit trees are way more desirable to the community than some of the like larger trees that we get grants to plant because of the carbon capture effect of them. So really trying to talk to the community, get their feedback, and see what type of trees really resonate with them. And then, of course, food. You mentioned food. It's important to have food at volunteer events. Food's a universal language. Barbecues are really important to folks. It's a great way to get people there. So, let's see here, some photos of just some of these various events. The bottom left-hand corner shows a barbecue that we had in conjunction with a big tree planting event in the neighborhood. Got some photos from the Arbor Day Festival with tree climbing, volunteers. We've had volunteer days with mariachis. We have, little shovels and get little kids involved. It's really important to get folks, started young and engaging in urban forestry. Okay, so yeah, it's a little bit more community engagement. So when, addressing the entire community or trying to come up with a larger campaign that's broader, it's important to sort of understand the community, the Latino community in your city, understand sort of the migration and history, how this impacts culture, do you have a lot of people coming from Mexico, Puerto Rico, Cuba, other countries? What traditions, holidays, histories come with that? When people migrate, they tend to gravitate to places where other people from their home country go. So, how you tend to end up with big immigrant populations. And the values that come with that, the history that comes with that tends to influence the experience and can translate to policy. These community values show up in policy. It's really important that you engage everybody, include them in the decision making process. So really going above and beyond to meet people where they're at. like I mentioned, the Urban Forest Master Plan for East Palo Alto, we had a steering committee. So we invited community members, community leaders, residents to sit on that steering committee, meet with us regularly, guide, our strategy, our outreach strategy, the things we look at, um, providing them really with a seat at the table to have, power to make decisions, and through that community engagement process, we had listening sessions, surveys, lots of conversations. It's important to recognize environmental injustice. Like in East Palo Alto, there's a history of redlining. There used to be a chemical waste treatment facility in a residential neighborhood. Being able to have conversations around that and trying to make things right and letting people know that you understand the damage that has been done, is much better than just not talking about it. The environmental injustices that these communities face, it's something that they live with. So not acknowledging it, not talking about it, not mentioning it, sometimes that does nothing to build trust. That can make people skeptical of people dancing around the major issues that might affect them. Whether it's environmental or crime, community violence, all sorts of things, that relate to the impacts of environmental and spatial injustice. Always treating the community with respect. Empowering folks, investing in neighborhoods with fewer trees or in communities that really need that additional support. Providing stipends, doing what you can to lower the barriers to entry, as mentioned before, and then of course, providing translation services, for folks that have the language barrier present. Translate events, materials, flyers. When you're canvassing, walking the streets, having somebody that's bilingual, to talk to folks. So lots of ways to engage professionals. Again, providing materials in Spanish, is key. City of East Palo Alto, we recently updated our tree protection ordinance, so we're working on materials, in English and Spanish to help with compliance and awareness. You know, although the city of Palo Alto does not have a large Hispanic population, I think it's about 9% or so. The vast majority of our tree care workers, construction workers, come from a Latino background. So it's really critical that we have folks that can speak to them in Spanish, can really connect with them. In general, tree policy and really all policy in general should be pretty easy to understand so that people can comply. It's important to have clear policies, regardless of language barriers, just easier for folks to comply. Yeah, Helen.
Yeah, one more minute.
Okay, great. And then, yeah, so citizen science, in Palo Alto, we work with Canopy on a great oak count, which we have volunteers that go out and, survey all of the oak trees in the city, as well as a young tree care survey, which are fantastic ways to engage community members, talk to them about trees, teach them about trees, get them connected to the, native trees in their community. um, you know, Fantastic way to do that. And then, a bunch of different workshops, education. We teach people to plant trees, how to prune trees. We go into classrooms and provide education lessons, children with volunteers. We offer tree walks, Spanish, offering these bilingual lessons for folks to, participate in urban forestry as a family. Again, a lot of similarities with Stefan Felipe's presentation. One thing that Canopy does offer that I think is really special, incredibly effective, is the Teen Urban Forester program, which is a paid internship for high school students in East Palo Alto. We provide them with leadership, leadership lessons. I've seen so many students blossom, beginning when they're freshmen, then by the time they, graduate, as seniors, they've just really, really blossomed. They know a lot about trees, have a lot of experience and are pretty much ready to function as arborists. And yeah, it's paid and just provides a fantastic service. It's a really, really popular program that has received a lot of funding and commendations. And then training, workforce development. Make sure you support your staff. You advertise all these opportunities, and it's important to have real entry level opportunities. They encourage diversity. Trying to remove some of those barriers, especially for folks that may not always have the opportunity to pursue a higher education because there are a lot of barriers there. Yeah. So thank you.